Welcome back to this Light Reading video series. I'm Terry Sweeney, contributing editor with Light Reading, and I'm joined now by Jurgen Hatheier, Chief Technology Officer and VP of Strategic Sales, EMEA for Ciena. Jurgen, of course, is talking at the Future Vision Conference. Jurgen, of course, we're up against a global pandemic, and I'm wondering from Ciena's perspective, how has COVID changed the telecommunications market in the last 12 months?
Yeah, absolutely, Terry. And thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. You know, at Ciena, we always want to keep our eye on the bigger picture. And we started running some primary research early into COVID to figure out what COVID actually does to our behavior, but also to our industry. And the biggest change that we saw, and which is a lasting change, by the way, is the end user behavior and remote working. So we conducted a study back in June, and we found out that almost 70% of the Brits will work remotely even more after the lockdown. And if you look at the gamers, unsurprisingly, they increased their time spent playing video during quarantine quite a bit. There is a proportion of gamers that spend between 5 and 20 hours a week. And then there are the serious ones that are 20 plus hours a week, on our network. And that number increased from 60 to above 80% during the pandemic. So really, these figures are driving significant different requirements into the network. And I want to just reference to a recent study that Openreach released, a statistic about the traffic growth in 2020. And they went from 22 petabytes to 50 petabytes within a year. And that's an unheard, doubling of traffic right out there on the edge.
So it sounds like people are doing what they were doing before the pandemic. They're just doing a whole lot more of it.
They're doing a whole lot of more on the network, and they're doing it in different places. So really, if you look at where the traffic is generated, a lot of the traffic moved off the wireless network, in the cities where everybody was on their phone, 4G, 5G now. They moved out to the rural areas and into the fixed network. And that really is, also a big shift. Just think about homeschooling, where we really put a lot more traffic on the wire. And that drove really an impact on the network, which also led a lot of our customers and ourselves to look at the network in a different way.
Talk to us, if you would, about the impact on the network. What changes have you seen in traffic patterns, in management facilities, that sort of thing? And how are you helping the industry deal with these changes?
So, first and foremost, I think what all caught us by surprise in the pandemic was the unpredictability that was put forward in the way traffic was consumed, but also where traffic was generated. Where we have previously seen, a steady growth of traffic year over year, we saw that the traffic also changed quite a bit in symmetry. So, a growth of 40%, let's say, in the downstream towards the users is something very common, but a doubling of the traffic generated in homes with, people working remotely, uploading stuff to SharePoint, video conferencing, homeschooling, all of that really caught us kind of by surprise. And a lot of operators who dealt really well, a lot of telcos and service providers who dealt well within the crisis had one of our core visions around the adaptive network already in place. And we call it adaptive network, but in fact, it's a very simple triangle of three things that an operator needs to have in order to cope with unpredictabilities. And that's a programmable infrastructure, big data analytics and intelligence on top, and then software control, which allows them to deliver a true network as a platform to deal with any types of applications, services, and traffic that we expect or didn't expect.
Okay, so this seems to lead to a topic that you speak about quite a bit, which is the holistic network impact, the way that customers drive new requirements for the network. Is it the same thing for enterprises?
Enterprises are definitely going through a transformation as well. Not only has the way changed how people connect to an enterprise, previously we had a VPN, you connected to the site and you connected to services. Over the last couple of years, we already had more and more cloud services. So from my home, I wouldn't necessarily connect to a Ciena network. I would connect to the cloud services, which could be hosted anywhere. And that is really where the big change is happening. All these workloads that are happening in the enterprise, they're moving around. And, moving around is some of those workloads is nothing new. So we have worked on cloudification for the last 10 years. We have moved things into the cloud. And what we are seeing now in terms of a different dynamic is that the physical location matters a lot more than it did in the past. You're driving latency sensitive applications, but also you are driving complex applications and automation, which require to have workloads separated between different data centers. I want to give you a quick example. One would be an automated warehouse. You have forklifts that are shifting pallets in a big industrial park even. You would not want all of those forklifts to connect to a cloud, a data center somewhere a couple of thousand miles away. You want that, all handled locally. You want to have the compute there on site. But then really those transactional orders like, hey, I got a new order, I have a new pallet inbound, that can be managed by a data center where you don't need to have real-time transactions. And that's just one example of how IT strategies are evolving and how the edge cloud will really dominate the discussion for many years to come.
Well, Jurgen, I'm glad you brought up the edge. How do cloud providers and telcos play together at the edge? How's that going?
Well, I guess that's really the $100 million question. And I'm so happy that, during the Future Vision event, we do have a panel where we discuss exactly that topic. So let me just give you my perspective. And we have had a lot of recent conversations with our customers. And, everybody sees really that constellation as a co-opetition model. So it really comes down to a balance on who provides what capability at what part of the network. So let's look at the network edge. There needs to be easy access to a standardized compute platform. You will have a lot of different cloud and enterprise applications, maybe even telco cloud applications hosted on the edge. And then the question is, does the telco really provide the platform for the cloud provider to use? Or does the cloud provider just deploy the infrastructure and relegate telco just to provide connectivity? So there are a lot of opportunities to really bring this forward, but on the other hand, there is risk involved to make sure that everybody has a balance and a viable business model at the end of the day.
Last but not least, Ciena is a big people company. How are you and your team holding up during the pandemic?
I have to say, when we started into the pandemic, I was only 1 week with Ciena. And of course, you start a new job and you feel like, oh, wow, what is that going to be now? You can't meet your colleagues face to face. And at Ciena, we were able to focus really on the core business, on the interaction, because our CIO and IT team have done an amazing job of really have a remote working environment ready when we needed it. So overnight, we moved from 100 sites to 7,500 sites. Basically, every employee was a site, and we had no issues. So we went from an office to a home working environment, and we were able to focus on doing our job and engaging with our colleagues in an efficient fashion. And now, since we transitioned into that quite effectively, we also deployed a lot more remote field tech support, and we enabled our customers and partners to be self-sufficient. We implemented e-learning resources, and what I'm personally excited about is we are using VR and AR technology quite a bit to really provide an immersive customer experience. And we use AR and VR not only with our customers, but back in the supply chain, in the repair center, where you can dial in an expert to help you in troubleshooting and be more efficient than pre-COVID on figuring out issues.
Jurgen Hatheier of Ciena, thank you so much for joining us today.
Terry, thank you very much. It was a pleasure speaking to you today.
This has been Terry Sweeney for Light Reading. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.